Hello guys, it's Armin Musovic here from Chess Guides. Today I would like to show you one of the games that I played in tournament for players with rating up to 2300. This tournament was played in Serbia a couple days ago. I won first place, but I have to say it was a very hard tournament. Very strong players. There were 92 players from 11 different countries. So we had candidate masters, FIDE masters. Everyone is really a serious player, so it's not that easy to play. This was just 1 second, let me decline this. So here this was round number 7, this game that I want to show you. So I have to say that this was just a critical game. Let me try to explain you why. So let's just try to see the standings here, this round number 7. As you can see here, I'm playing on the first table against candidate master from Serbia, Stanojevic Ilija, and it was very important in this moment not to lose the game. So of course, if I could win the game, it would be very good, but it was very important not to lose this game, because after round number 7 there are just 2 more rounds, and you know, if you lose the game, it's actually very hard to catch your opponent who is trying to be first. So let's just try to see what happened in this game. So I was black, and we will try to see this from my perspective. My opponent, candidate master from Serbia, Stanojevic Ilija, he opened the game with c4. So we have English opening here. c4, c5, symmetrical variation. We have knight c3, knight c6. Both opponents are trying to grab the space in the center. We have knight f3, and now I played g6. Of course, here it is just possible to play knight f6, just to enter with, let's say, even more symmetrical English variation. Sometimes you can play up to even 10 moves for both sides, same moves, symmetrical variation. But here I wanted to play g6, so my idea was just to play very fast here on this diagonal, on dark squares. And my opponent played e3, so he's also trying to grab the space in the center. Maybe you could expect something like g3, but this is also fine for white. So we have bishop g7, just trying to continue with my idea, and we have d4. My opponent really wants to grab the center here. We have takes, and white takes. But let's just try to see one variation that could happen here. Actually, I was thinking about d6 immediately. So let's just try to see what would happen here eventually. Let's say something like d6. This is very interesting line, because now you can expect that white will take. And after this move, it is possible actually for black first to take on c3. Because after this there is very bad pawn structure here for white, and now it's not that important for black that he will lose the right to castle here. Let's say he takes, now white will probably take. I mean, he doesn't have to take, but if he takes, black can choose, maybe to take with the king, maybe with the knight, but of course it's not mistake here not to take with the knight. We are maybe losing some control in the center, but we have nice control here over the square d4, and knight cannot really do much. He cannot really punish the fact that your knight is not anymore on c6. So this would be totally fine for black, but even if king takes with later king c7 and just developing here the pieces, this cannot be something very good for white. This is probably just equal position even now. So that would be just a possibility here for black, but I didn't play that. I took on d4, my opponent takes on d4, and now simply d6. Okay, so I just, of course, want to develop my pieces. We know that development of the pieces it's always just very important thing from the very beginning. You know, you want to grab some space, you don't want to stay with your pieces, not to do anything. So this was my idea. I want just to pin this knight, eventually to attack more and more d4 square. My opponent played bishop e2, just developing, and also, let's say, just protecting more this diagonal here on the queen. However, I just continued here with my idea. So we have bishop g4. And now, well, My opponent did not play the best move here, or better move than bishop e3. So let's try to explain why this move cannot be the best here for white. Okay, it seems that I cannot really take and do something more here on d4, but it seems unstoppable here for black to play knight h6 and something like knight h5, and that is actually very nice position for this knight. Very nice position. What should my opponent play here? Actually, he could just go castle here. It seems like he's losing the pawn, but actually we will see that this pawn also can be taken. Let's say castle, let's say if bishop takes, if knight takes, well, of course, it would be a huge mistake to take with the bishop. There is just one intermediate move check, and after that bishop will be gone. So if knight takes, you're weakening just diagonal. Bishop can take, let's say rook attacks the bishop. He cannot really go to c6, but this bishop actually can go anywhere here. Well, you don't have to go to f3 because this knight can trade, but even if you go something like this, bishop e4, this knight cannot really develop with attack because then this diagonal will be blocked, so this knight will be taken. Well, even if you go, I don't know, let's say something like this, and you might think that this bishop is bad. Actually, now this is bad position here because you're actually not developing. This knight can jump, leaving this bishop, but after that you can allow something like knight c7 fork, and you can resign the game. So actually here white would be fine just to go castling, which is just continuing with your development. However, bishop e3, as we said, cannot be the best move because now knight h6, and simply, you know, black is also developing without any problem. When you're black and when you're developing without any problem, you know, it's just easier to play because black is always fighting from the very beginning for something, for space, for development. White is the one who opens the game, and you know, black is the one who is always struggling with some things, but here I'm not struggling anymore as black, so you know, I have totally equal game, which is good for black. So we have d5. What is white trying to do here? He is trying just you know, to be aggressive in the center, trying to steal the tempo move here on my knight. Of course it is very bad to withdraw, or I don't know, let's say to go on b4, you can just lose your knight. Also, if you go here with taking, you know, I don't want to enter into some lines. This is just typical way how you can play in the center. So my opponent fights here for the center. These are two squares that both knights attack. So what can you do in position like this? You can first destroy the knight of your opponent, which is very important piece. He controls these two squares. And now eventually if white takes on c6, that would be actually a huge mistake, because of course now you can just take here. Let's say bishop takes on c6, so you took the pawn, your pawn up, you have a fantastic bishop here on c6. So after d5, after takes on f3, that bishop on f3 has to be taken. So after that, of course, now because knight is not any longer here in the center, it's gone from the table, you can just jump on e5. And you know, my opponent has bishop pair here, but simply you know, this knight is actually very aggressive, very strong piece here. So we have check. We have check here. Well, of course, if my opponent wanted to go back, knight f5 would be something you can expect, because I could just continue with my development here with attack. Actually, that would be just one good attack on the bishop. So first we have check, and now you know, if you're trying to be, if you're a little bit afraid here, you might play something like knight d7. You know, you might be afraid of this queen. Maybe you don't want to trade the queens or something like that, but in positions like this you really have to continue with keeping your strong position. You cannot just go back with your knight. This would be a huge mistake in positional meaning. You don't want to go back. You don't want to go back here. You want to keep your knight on e5 in the center. So we have queen d7. And now we have bishop e2. So okay, this bishop actually doesn't want to be taken on f3, controlling these two squares as well. But what, let's say if this queen takes on d7, would you take with the king or with the knight? So of course somebody will say, if I take with king, after that I cannot use my right for castling. That is true, but actually when queens are not on the table, you should not be afraid that much of losing the right of castling. In this case, you should definitely take with your king. And as you can see here, you're just keeping your pressure. You know, this should be just very, very good position for black. This is again a pretty equal position, but you know, for black, when you're playing without any struggling, it's just very good. So after queen d7, we have bishop e2. And of course, in this position, you can simply trade the queens. But there is also interesting move like knight d3, which seems like a bad move because that knight is free here. It's not protected on d3. But actually, white cannot really take the knight. If he takes the knight, there is one intermediate move with check, and then nobody protects the queen. So that would be impossible. So after this check, he could just go. He could just go on f1. And you know, this is pretty okay position for white. It seems that this pawn is just free, but after this move, simply queen b3, and now you know, that knight simply cannot go anywhere. That knight is actually trapped. Actually, wait, after bishop takes, and after this, yeah, exactly. So after this, it is just game over. So let's go back. After that check, everything would be pretty fine for white. So after this, we have queen takes, knight takes, and now of course knight f5. You just want to attack more and more. If white allows something like this, you know, that would be just pretty good for black. That would be isolated pawn, which could be under attack. You don't really want to have isolated pawn here. So we have bishop d2 withdrawing here. As you can see, two knights are very aggressive against two bishops here. So we have also knight d4, just grabbing the space. So of course fork is hanging. White cannot really go anywhere with his king to create castling because this is also hanging. What do you do here? So my opponent went with his rook to c1, just protecting that c2 square, and now castle. Well, let me just tell you one thing here. In this moment, I was thinking actually a lot what to do here, because you know, you have great development, but how to continue here? How to punish your opponent? How to find some good plan? You know, there are no tactics here, so you really have to find some strategical plan. So I was thinking what to do that my opponent actually cannot do here. He cannot do castling here, and I just wanted to go there, you know. I just want to develop more and more. Simply later I just want to enter more and more with my pieces into the game. So we have bishop c3, attacking my knight. And what to do here? I just don't have big choice. I have to take. So after taking here, we have rook c8. I'm trying to attack more and more, and now of course we have b3. Even now, it's not easy to say what to do, because okay, this knight is out of the game. He cannot really go down. You know, if you compare the knights, I have stronger knight, let's say centralized knight here on e5. But again, it's not that easy to do anything here. You know, there are no queens here on the table. It's so hard actually to find correct plan here. I was just thinking, you know, what is the difference here between the kings? It's always important to bring your pieces into the game, especially to put them on some strong or important files, diagonals, or ranks. So rook from f to e8. I'm simply trying to put some important pieces here on the king. Through the time, of course, I cannot do anything now immediately, but through the time, this rook can be important piece. So we have also developing from the side of my opponent, a rook from h to d1. And now we have h5. So I was just thinking about this square. You know, in some moments, if this open check happens, king goes there. If you take the pawn, that knight can be also trapped. So I was thinking that it was just important to have this protection on g4 square, but also in some moments I was thinking to attack this rook. So if you don't push this pawn, somehow blocking that pawn on h7 also I didn't like. So h5, and we have bishop d4. He's trying to attack my pawn on a7. And now I found that it's good chance actually to go away from this diagonal, because you can expect f4 in any moment. If this happens, you have to move your knight. He will trade the bishop. When you trade these two bishops, we will have just in material meaning same position, but in positional meaning actually he would be just a little bit more aggressive. This is more aggressive pawn structure. If you compare these two pawns, white should be slightly better in that position. So we have bishop h6, just trying to attack the rook to go away from this diagonal with tempo. So we have rook b1. Rook is going away. But now e6. I'm trying to open the game. Everything is connected with this king on e2. He takes, and now of course I could take with the rook, maybe with the pawn, but then I just wanted to play one intermediate move first. So this is intermediate move. I'm also protecting the pawn, and I'm threatening now to take. And this rook that I put it here on e8, now he is trying to do something. Of course, somebody will say that it's just one check, but this rook can be into the game. So it's always unpleasant, to put your king in file like this. My opponent played king f1. I expected something else. I expected this bishop will simply go here, and then if I take with rook, king can go in that case on f1, and this will be isolated pawn. Let's say something like bishop b2. I take with check, and he goes there. And I cannot really use this file right now. I can just try to create some threat, but of course that knight wants to enter into the game as soon as possible. So maybe my opponent rushed a little bit here with this bishop. So with this king f1, sorry. So king f1. And now I wanted to take with rook. That was my previous idea. I wanted to take with rook, but then I thought because king is here, maybe it's just better to take with the pawn, because after that I again have this same idea to attack the file with my rook on his king. So I took now with pawn. Of course, this is now idea through the time. I want just to have more and more space with my pieces, but these two pawns are hanging pawns. They are connected, but actually it's not easy to play with this pawn structure. When you have open position like this, with the white's pieces, you always have to be careful here. You can just, you can just be under attack all the time. So now my opponent went bishop b2, and this was critical moment of the game. Critical game of the tournament and critical moment of the game. My pawn is hanging right now. After this move, simply this is just attack. Rook attacks on d6. And I was thinking a lot here, but my time was just going down. This is move number 24. I lost great time here, so we are just entering in zeitnot very, very soon. Me especially, because I was even in this position worse with time. So it was the moment when I was thinking what to do here. I can really, I can defend the pawn. I can defend the pawn 2 times, but I was just afraid that this knight can do miracles here. Knight c3, knight e4. Here, the fork is hanging. That pawn might be under attack even more times with bishop, with rook, eventually with knight, and these are just when you're thinking in that way, you are just the one who is defending. I did not want to defend here, so I wanted to attack. So I was thinking a lot, and my time was just going down. Zeitnot started here. I was very bad with my time, so I just played d5. This is very risky move. but of course it is in my style to play like this. I don't want to be I don't want to use my defensive moves in positions like this, especially in situations in tournament when you really need to defend your position. I didn't want here to play passively. So after this I'm doing what? I'm sacrificing my pawn. But what will happen after that? My pieces can be very active. So that was my point. So he accepted, takes, and now rook takes. Okay, I am pawn down. But position is actually pretty open. So I just use this move, knight b4. So I'm threatening, of course, on rook, on d5, but that pawn is also unprotected on a2, which is of course not that important in this moment, but this knight is also doing something else. He opened this file for the rook. Eventually d3 can be important square for this knight. So my opponent actually has to be precise here, but he saw that my time was actually very bad, and he wanted to attack more and more, to play faster and faster, which can be sometimes actually a mistake. A psychological mistake. So he went rook d7. Actually, it was just more precise to go here. This was also with check, but my opponent thought that this will be more important rank. Actually, you can see that this bishop controls g7. I don't have to worry about g7. That would be very bad thing for me, but because bishop is there, I don't have to worry that much. So he went rook d7, and now my pieces are actually open to try some attack. I was very bad with time here, so I needed to play very fast. I think I had maybe 2 minutes here, 2 or 3 minutes. Of course, after every move we have new half minute, new 30 seconds, but when you're playing slow game and when you enter into zeitnot, it's actually half minute is actually nothing. So I went rook c2, of course. I'm trying to use now the fact that that was just open file. I want to attack more and more, and I simply have also, I have threats like this. If this rook also goes away from the file, this knight can jump. That can be some kind of crazy attack here on the king. If these rooks enter here with check, that can be also game over for white. So white has to be precise. So he went knight c3. What is he doing with this move? He's stopping my rook to go on e2. He's also trying to be more aggressive with his knight, maybe just to enter into the game after some time. That knight is in the game now, but even in zeitnot, even I was very bad with time, I found a very strong move, that is bishop d2. So the point is that you're attacking this square 2 times. So it is possible to deflect this rook. I don't know, let's say that white continues here to take and to attack the knight. I can simply take the bishop, with threat of trading the rooks and checkmate. He cannot really take because this can be just a checkmate. Bishop d2 is just doing great job here. This is big threat to deflect the rook. Big threat. So after that move he goes knight e2. And this was again critical moment. My time was just going down. I was a couple of times on 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. I need to play move very fast, so I have 31 seconds or 32. It was like that couple of times. It happened couple of times in this game. So after this move, I realized I can actually take the knight on e2. Why? Because when I take, king takes, I can just give check with my rook. Let's say here check, and now I can also have 2 minor pieces for rook. But I was actually not happy with this rook. That was the reason I didn't want to do it. I was just not happy with this rook. Maybe I should do this, but I was afraid. Also, I was afraid of this line here, king d1, but actually I didn't realize that it is possible to take with bishop. I was thinking of this line here. If rook takes, bishop takes, and now rook takes here, knight takes, and this, let's say rook takes here. So now this has to be better for white. I'm not sure how much, but I didn't like this. But actually I didn't realize that after king d1 I can actually take with bishop. Now a3 is impossible because my bishop controls that square. Well, white would like to attack this knight, because if that knight moves, then nobody protects the rook. So because a3 is impossible, it is possible to do something like this. But then I just couldn't calculate that in this position that would be very bad actually for white. After this move, you know, these three pieces are very strong against the white's king. If this happens here, so he can take the rook, there is actually intermediate move, check. So after this bishop takes, after let's say a3, you don't want to take because then nobody protects the rook, but you can go back and you can clearly see white cannot do anything. This is something I just missed in my game, of course. I was very bad with time. I don't know, let's say b4 you take, that would be just game over. So in this position I saw that this can happen, but I was not happy with trading a lot of pieces here. I wanted actually to keep a lot of pieces, so you know, motives are bigger. The number of the motives is simply bigger in that case. So I just played knight takes on a2, and it seems funny move. It seems like very funny move because actually I'm returning the pawn, which I lost a couple moves ago, but and I'm keeping this tension here in the game. And my opponent just played couple of these moves. He played very fast. He wanted my clock to be on 0, you know, he wanted to win on time. So he made mistake. He goes rook d1, which seems like a normal move. He's entering with new piece here into the game. He's attacking this bishop, but actually he didn't realize that two pieces are hanging. When I move my bishop, two pieces are hanging. So actually I should move my bishop here because I'm keeping this threat in some case. So I actually made mistake. I went here bishop h6. So why this is mistake? It seems like very important that I'm keeping this g7 square. There is no check, but actually that check was not that important, you know. Now there is also one variation that white could play, so it would be a draw again, and this is something I realized. He can do something like this, rook d6, because I cannot be very fast with taking the piece. Let's try to see this line. He didn't play this. He played here with blundering the piece, but we will see that very soon. So he should go here, rook from d1 to d6. If I take now this knight, he can just give me a check. Of course I cannot go here first of the bishop, but even if I can go, that would be with check. That has to be bad move. So after this move he could just take, and he could you know, let's say takes. He's also threatening the mate. This would be pretty you know, equal position actually. After check, let's say here, after some checks, knight cannot really jump. Everything is controlled. Both players have their own threats. That would be just equal position here. So my opponent actually played rook d8. He thought that I will just take and then he will take with check, so he will try something, but actually I can take with this rook, and I'm keeping my rooks, and I just I won the piece. So this was this happened in extremely bad situation when I was very bad with time. After this move, you know, I was just more happy to play because I won the piece. Okay, maybe for a couple of pawns, because we will see very soon he can take even more pawns, but you know, I was happy because my king is pretty safe. I have one piece more, one minor piece, and of course the game will be on. So after this I took on e8, and now he's trying this maneuver, sorry, this just attack here, this simple attack to attack a file and to take here on a7. I was taking here because I had maybe now 1 minute and something because of this playing the move, and you have more new 30 seconds. I was thinking, my opponent was watching at me, looking at me like, what are you thinking, like you have only one square. Actually I was trying to create more simple here, to simplify the position. So what was my idea? There is actually one typical way that you can just pin. You can just try to pin the piece, so he cannot, after he takes with rook, if I have time to pin this bishop, he cannot really go away from that pin. He has to give his bishop again. So that's exactly what I played. I wanted to simplify the things. So I went rook c8. Well, he was also now in zeitnot. He takes and simply rook c2. And what can he do? I have simple threat bishop g7. He will lose the piece, so he decided just to take a couple of pawns. He takes, I take, and he takes on b7. So now, of course, it's still not that easy to play this endgame, but you know, I was just happy that I have this rook here controlling second rank, controlling this pawn. I also have this minor piece, and I thought I will just win the game. Let's try to see what happened. Bishop f8, just stopping this pawn to go on b4, and he goes here. Of course, I was not only attacking here this square on b4, but I was also threatening to go to c5, so I just wanted, of course, to attack these pawns here. So he's stopping that. So now I go bishop g7. Now I want to go to d4. How can he stop this now? If he goes here, he can lose the pawn. You know, maybe he could go here, but that is very passive position of the rook. So he goes here with tempo, attacking my pawn on g6. King goes to h7. Rook goes here. So rook had time to create this maneuver. He's protecting this pawn, and he wants to go to f3 to protect everything. I'm attacking, he is defending, and now I have time to push my pawn. I need more space for my king, and my pawns, they seem very good here. They're attacking a lot of squares. You know, this king should go here on g6, and that seems like ideal position for my king. h3, king g6, and now king e1. You know, white also asks, you know, what do you really want to do here? What to do now as black? But I can just play tempo moves, of course. Bishop c5, because this king cannot really come closer. He has to defend this. He has to be there. So he goes back, and then I go here on d6. I'm controlling this diagonal, and I want just to push g4 in some case. I have all the controlling squares here. I need to create some progress, of course, with my pawns and king through the time. So he went g3. He went g3. He's also opening a little bit with his pawns. Maybe he's hoping that we will just try to trade couple of pawns, and he will play for some draw. Still tempo move, bishop e5. I'm waiting for my opponent maybe to move his rook, and I will just enter with my king. So he is not playing with his rook. He goes back, king g2, and now it is actually perfect moment to push this pawn. Why this pawn is so important to be on g4, we will see later. So g4 takes, attack on the rook, and rook goes down. We can see that this rook doesn't want to leave f-file. Now, you know, I was thinking that because I have great control over this f-file, I'm controlling all of these squares for the rook. I just wanted to do one intermediate move. So bishop d6, attacking the rook. He goes rook c8. He's trying to pin my bishop, and this pawn, of course, is hanging now. But believe it or not, this is not good move for black. I took the pawn. Of course, both of players, we were both in zeitnot, but actually I should not take the pawn, because after this my opponent now made mistake. He went back. Now he's trying to defend his f2 square, but actually he could go rook c6, trying to attack my bishop. I have to protect this, and now there is one interesting maneuver. Let's say king f1. And he's trying to do what? He's trying to come closer, and he wants, let's say, I don't know, let's say I go with my king. He's attacking my rook. There are no checks. If I go down, simply f3 can be played here. What to do now? What to do? If I give check, he can go away on light square, but this is hanging. Let's say check. You know, I don't have to go. Sorry, white doesn't have to go to f2. He can go there, but this is hanging. This is hanging, and now, you know, if you trade the last pawn of black, then black has to play with rook and bishop against the rook. So that would be, you know, that would be tricky endgame. We know in practice that bishop and rook against the rook, you know, they can win the game. That happens a lot of time, but you know, you have to be very strong player to understand different kind of maneuvers in that position. So my opponent just went back to c2 very fast, and you know, he just allowed me now to be very aggressive here. So simply and finally starting to go there with my king, just starting to be more aggressive there, not sitting on g6 anymore. So he's trying to stop my king, rook f3. I'm trying actually you know, to control this f3 square in any kind of meaning, because I don't want to allow, of course, my opponent to push that pawn on f3. So king goes to g1, pinning the king. Of course, this can be just the threat to take the pawn. He goes back, and now bishop d4 waiting move. If this rook goes away from e file, I have a chance to enter and to be closer with my king. So he goes there. And now, of course, this is totally winning position for black. It's interesting position. It can be the question, how can black actually win this? You know, what to do here, how to create the progress here. You cannot come closer with your with your king. What can you really do with your rook here? He can just go up and down. It can be the question actually what to do. So I found the motive. This pawn, of course, is on 4th rank from the perspective of black, which means these are 3 critical squares for my king. So I was actually trying to see what happens if I take. I took with bishop on f2, and I remember here in this moment it was you know, couple of people watching the game, and they were just you know, totally surprised with this move. They thought maybe I blunder something. Of course, I calculated everything here, but what is actually the point of this move? My opponent played here king g2, so he didn't take. But what would happen if he takes? If he takes with rook, now the point is that you don't want to take with your rook. You want to come closer with your king, and we will see why. If this happened here, after this move, this is totally losing position for white. We have 2 variations now. White can take, or white can move somewhere with his king, because he cannot go anywhere with his rook. This is pinned. If he takes, king takes, of course, and now this is losing position for white. If he goes here, you enter into critical square. I mean, this is just 4th rank for this pawn. It is just lost position anyway. If he goes here with his king, you don't want actually to take the pawn. You want to trade the rooks, and now this is theoretical position, theoretically winning position for black. After this, he cannot really save this pawn. You're just coming closer. After this, king goes to f7. After this, you can just take the pawn, and this is theoretical position because you conquered here this one of these critical squares. You're winning the game. But for pawns G and B here on these files, when you have position like this, you are actually going here to win, not here. So after this and after this, actually this is just a winning position. But let me try to explain why not to go here. If you go here, white can try to do something like this. King h2, if you push the pawn, it is a draw. If you push the pawn, king goes to h1, this is trap, very nice trap. If you go here, it's stalemate. If you push the pawn, if you go here, it's again stalemate. But even if you go here, you can fix your mistake. After this, you are actually going king f2. He has to go king h1, and now after king g3 and king g1, you have completely same position. You just used triangle here and maneuver, and now you're not going to create your mistake again. Now you're going here, and this is totally losing position. So let's go back. Let's try to see. So after this move, he went king g2, but if he takes, let's try to explain why trading first is mistake. If you take now, and if he takes, now you want to create that maneuver to grab the pawn, but now it's actually too late. White is exactly on time to stop your king. White has opposition, you cannot do anything. You can go left and right, but he is not leaving his opposition. So why it was important to wait for this king to be here? Because after this and after this, we can clearly see that you're winning one tempo. With this move, Rook cannot go anywhere, and even if king goes anywhere, you just entered with your king. You won one square. Because of that square, you are going to win the game. So after bishop takes, he was thinking, and he was also in zeitnot here, he realized he cannot take, so he went back. I mean, he played with his king, of course. Now he's also losing his second pawn on g3, and this is totally losing position for white. So we played formally couple more moves. He went rook e8, bishop is just going there, rook e7. Rook is trying to conquer this second rank because everything is controlled here. Check, king e4, just creating progress. He went down, check, he went here, of course g3. This is the threat now. You want to give check, you want to give also check here eventually. He's trying to pin my my bishop, but of course I can also leave my bishop now, because after this move he can just resign the game, which also which actually happened in this moment. He just resigned because what can he do? If he gives one check, I can block with my bishop, then I have check, and here check or mate. So if he takes, of course you can just give one check. After this move you can deflect the king, and you can just take the rook, and after this move you can just give checkmate here with your rook. So this is just unstoppable here. And that was just the moment when my opponent just resigned the game. So after king f3 I won very hard game. It was actually very hard to play this. If you remember that moment when I sacrificed my pawn on d5, I was very bad with time. I was just I was thinking it will be almost impossible to win this game. I was just fighting maybe for some draw in that moment. I was thinking with myself like that. But then I just realized, after this game, when I won this, after that moment when he resigned the game, I realized I can just play again on this tournament for first place. And after this game, 2 more rounds, I won 1.5 points here, one winning position and one draw, and I was actually the first in this tournament. It was very hard, a lot of good players, but very nice feeling when you win some tournament like this, up to 2300. I'm again a little bit back with my rating. I earned 23 points here. Some fantastic friendship here in Serbia. We were here all together 7 days, so 9 rounds, 9 slow games in 7 days. It's not easy to play, but because of this COVID situation, I was very happy that I could just share some happy moments with my chess friends. And that would be it, my friends. This is something I wanted to show you today. I hope you enjoyed, and maybe for next time I will just prepare some other games that I played on this tournament. Thank you very much, and goodbye.